30 seconds, studio. Twenty. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Good evening. For most of us who live ordinary lives in ordinary homes, the town hall and those people who order our lives from it is a remote, even incomprehensible place. Government at local and municipal level, and of course national and parliamentary level, has become a massive machine, which many of us might feel from time to time is incapable of understanding our individual problems and needs. The fact that we elect our councillors and our members of parliament ought to ensure that we feel ourselves well taken care of. But these days, frequently through no fault of those elected representatives, the business of government seems to have become removed from the public. There's probably no better illustration of this than a series of events that occurred in Islington last summer. The people who lived on a council estate there thought they knew what was right for them. The town hall didn't respond, so they took action into their own hands, in fact broke the law in order to confront local government and force the issue. On one side, housewives and children, and on the other, all the officials and elected members of an enormous borough council. During the battle, Jonathan Power and a film team were there. They filmed exactly what happened as it happened. They didn't know, nor did anybody, how it would end. It's a remarkable record, and the tone is perhaps set by the voice of Gary Watson reading a poem at the beginning of the film, a poem specially written to convey the mood of those mothers in Islington who took on the town hall.
When we have finished with the world, the work we are doing, and everything is in order, everyone behind a door with a number on it. When we have filled up all the spaces, and there are no more flowers or trees, and no more grass to roll on, and no more smells of dampness in autumn, I wonder, where will the squirrels be, and where the children? And I wonder, where will laughter be? Will it be forgotten, along with birdsong and insects buzzing? When we have finished with the world, all built and completed and a place for everything, what will we do, I wonder, with the small creatures we used to call children?
A council housing estate in Islington, London. Anonymous, drab and uninspired. An island of dull red brick bounded on every side by hurrying commuters and hurtling lorries. Parents and children trapped in an urban jungle. Not even the estate's own piece of grey-black tarmac is safe for long. Islington has the least play space of any London borough. For these children, the nearest park is a mile of busy roads away. Most parents, understandably, won't let their children go that far. The bigger boys have little else to do but fight and wrestle or throw a ball around, but that doesn't make them very popular.
They're chased the whole time. The porter's out there, you can't play ball, you can't do this. Then there's the neighbours complaining about the children, telling them to so-and-so off. They're getting swore at all through the summer. The children get swore at by the people in the flats.
Don't you bleating call me dirt, you'll get smacked in the bleating ear hole. Go on, you go home. Get your hair cut. Go on, Kershaw, get home. Get your hair cut. And a bow.
because we ain't got nowhere to play. We ain't got nowhere to play. So we play football out here. Right. We go in the Sphinx, and then all the old bags open the window.
We can't play football, can you see? Because it's either the ball coming or it's the caretaker.
Yeah, no, but in the Sphinx, if we play in or go near a car, we get told. We just move near a car, right? And they'll go, get away from our son's car.
For almost a year, just behind the flats, an old woodyard and scout hall have lain empty and derelict. Whenever the boys have had enough of being shouted at by irate neighbours, they retreat here. The council have plans to build flats, a car park and a new scout hall on the site. The parents don't like their children playing here. It's too dangerous, they say. They've asked the council to fence it off securely. But nothing happened until one day.
Last April, a boy called Robert and my son Christian came in here, climbed over the wall, came in here, got into the Scouts Hall, climbed up on the roof, and there was some asbestos roofing left by Islington Borough Council. Robert jumped from the roof of the Scouts Hall through the asbestos roof and died. And I thought, I was so lucky, you know, that my son was alive. It could have been him. But, you know, I should do something. I went to other mothers on the estate and asked, you know, if they'd help me. I didn't get anybody for a while, and I kept going. And eventually I went to Mrs. O'Mahony, I went to Mr. and Mrs. Jor, and I got roughly 18 people.
Phyllis Kershaw, shocked into action by the death of her son's friend, began to organise.
The council haven't given us any permission or anything at all, so we're just going in and taking it. Yeah, all right then. All right then? Yes. Come on, let's go.
Soon she had other parents, like Mrs. O'Mahony, helping her.
You're coming with me now.
The movement of angry mothers grew. They decided that since the council wouldn't act, they should take over the empty woodyard themselves and turn it into an adventure playground. So one day, in the middle of July, just before the school holidays were due to begin, Phyllis Kershaw and her supporters went into action. Like a new day Pied Piper of Hamelin, she led her motley band of mothers and children to lay claim to a play space of their own. For 5 weeks, they tried to negotiate an agreement with the council. But the moment the mothers started making their demands, the council announced that they must begin the building work planned for the site immediately. To the parents, the plans seemed nonsense. Flats they could understand, but why a large car park? And anyway, the contractors wouldn't need the whole site immediately, so why shouldn't the children have a corner of it for the next 6 weeks? Their patience had run out. They were going to make this site theirs, whatever the council said.
I'm not going in. Oh, yes, you are. I'm not. I'm in enough trouble.
And we've been up here.
What's this doing?
Be careful, Chris.
When it comes to working really hard, there's all the difference in the world between a place that's provided for you and a place you make yourself. Next morning, while the children were at school, some of the mothers met on the site to discuss what next needed to be done. Unexpectedly, 2 well-dressed gentlemen appeared. They were officials from the council, sent to find out what on earth was going on.
What is going to happen? I mean, we are intending to take this piece of ground ourselves. Other than...
Well, you're trespassing for a start.
Yes, well,
Yes,
we realise
you understand
that.
that.
We know that we're trespassing.
Well, come 7 days' time, they will really set to demolish this. So, I mean, there's no place for children.
We are going to do our utmost to see that you don't develop that piece of ground down there. We need that for our children. Why can't we have it for our children?
The workmen left those holes there. They left the holes there with water in them that one of the children could have fell in and drowned. We have to come in and fill this in to make sure our children don't die.
Phyllis is not giving us a direct answer why we cannot have the ground for our children.
Because it has been let to a demolition contractor who's preparing to demolish it.
No, just a minute. We had a child die because Islington Borough Council wouldn't pull the asbestos roofing there.
Oh, well.
And
no, it's not.
You moved in and started demolishing this.
When we asked
When we said that we were going to take this ground over as an adventure playground, you moved in with your bulldozer and started demolishing it. Why should there be parking space for 90 cars when there can't be a small area cut off for the children? Why don't you answer the questions that you're given?
These are not my...
You're just avoiding them all the time.
Oh, yes, I'm afraid I am. This is not my question.
No, but well, you should give us a direct answer.
No.
It wasn't going to be developed.
Expecting that they might have trouble with the police, the mothers had taken the precaution of phoning the local police inspector to tell him what they were doing. He pledged his support by offering to argue their case at the town hall. He said he believed a good playground kept kids out of trouble, and that was important in a borough which had one of the highest juvenile crime rates in London.
Oh, right. Well, now, look, you telephoned me this morning.
Yes.
I told you what I was doing, and I told you I'd come and see you.
Yes.
This site is being cleared by the demolition people. And until it's cleared, nobody will give any decision. So I have to ask you all to leave, you know, all right? So if you don't mind, and then what you discuss with me on the telephone, I'll come and see you about and we'll sort out.
Yes,
all right?
that's fair enough, yes.
Okay, then?
The council had given the order to close off the site. Before, no one had cared too much if children wandered in and played unsupervised. Now, suddenly, security was vitally important. Officialdom was threatened. But that wasn't going to stop the tenants.
Nailing up this is not going to deter us at all. We'll only just take it down and enter it again.
You're just going to take it
Yes,
down
we're
and go
going
in
to
again?
enter that ground again.
Do you think the other mothers will feel the same as you
Yes,
do?
they'll all stick beside us, and I feel we'll get all the support we need.
It was going to take more than a few nails and a piece of corrugated iron to keep the parents and children out. Moreover, when the invading forces returned that evening, the police were nowhere to be seen. The parents believed it was clear where police sympathies lay.
Out from the inside.
The school holidays were due to begin the following day, and the children worked to build a wall to separate off their corner of ground. By the next day, the first day of the holidays, things were really beginning to move. An adventure playground was no longer a dream. It was there. Struts and bars, ropes and tires. Most important, it was all their own work. While the children established their stronghold on the old woodyard, the mothers were carrying the fight to the town hall. That morning, the town clerk had sent them a letter telling them to get off the site. It was impossible, he said, to abandon the plans for a block of flats, a car park and a scout hall. The mothers replied with an ultimatum. Unless the council could find them an alternative, they were staying put. To make sure the letter arrived on the right desk, they decided to deliver it by hand to the councillor responsible for making the final decision. And they sent copies of their letter to the press.
The Islington Journal trying to get a reporter up here, and the Islington Gazette, Evening Standard are going to do a story on it this evening in this evening's paper. Nationwide are going to get in touch with me as regards to getting an open discussion on television.
But while the parents and children were basking in the photographer's attention, the council had been busy putting out its version. It persuaded the local paper to run a story arguing that the parents were holding up a £500,000 plan for homes. The council quickly followed up this shrewd publicity with a letter to all the members of the estate offering a compromise. It was that the council should pay for a play leader to work on the sterile tarmac adjoining the flats, far from most children's idea of an adventure playground. The next day, the tenants held a meeting to discuss the council's offer. Suggested compromise, coupled with the adverse publicity, divided the parents.
I am moving out from this meeting and pulling out of the whole, what would you call it? Affair, because I've accepted the council's offer.
Nothing happened until you started that bit of a ruckus last week, and the minute you started that ruckus, they are the first written letters we have had from the town hall, because people went back and told the town hall we were being divided.
I feel that what you're doing is not benefiting my children. Thank you very much. All right? Thank you.
You say we continue? Yeah. I think the next best thing is to go around every flat on the estate, ask for the signatures all over again, how many people want the woodyard for the children. Then we can take this, plus our children, plus the children's signatures, to the town hall on Thursday with the march. Is that fair enough?
The petition and march idea re-galvanized the parents, and their new enthusiasm was quickly transmitted to the children. Before long, every child on the estate who could write his name had signed. There was no question of disunity among the children. Excitement was mounting again. That day brought some other good news, the headline in the rival local newspaper. The day of the long-awaited march had arrived. The children had been up late the night before making banners. Surely this, they all felt, would make the council change its mind.
Come on, you're coming.
Stand here with him.
Stand over there, will you? Off the edge, start. The curb, no out in the road.
We wanna
position from the children?
From the children. That's just from the children.
What? How many do you want? How many do you want? 4? This lady up here. Whoa, here. Whoa, here you are. This lady. It's the deputy mayor.
For your signatures. Do you live in that area?
Yes.
Where do you live?
On White Flats.
And where did you used to play before you played on this playground?
Straight.
Don't you have a playground in the flats? No, I thought there were 2 there.
Yeah, we have the swings, but the swings are always tied up in the on the bars, and we can't even swing on them.
And would it be better, do you think, if you had an adventure playground in the flats?
Much better. It'd be much better for the little children.
And you'd like that, would you? And you
But the smiles of the deputy mayor meant nothing. Perhaps the vast majority of councillors saw the march as simply as a bunch of council tenants and their children, who could safely be ignored. At a council meeting later that evening, not one councillor spoke up to give the parents' point of view, and the council decided by a vote of 70 to none that their demands couldn't be met. The town hall was not even listening. I spoke to Councillor Southgate, deputy leader of the council, and asked him why it was the council had so categorically rejected the parents' demands.
Well, the principal reason that it's difficult, almost impossible for us to allow them to have it for the duration of the summer holidays is that we have a building scheme here which is in its cost so close to the cost controls the ministry impose on us that if the building scheme doesn't start on the 16th of August and indeed is delayed anything beyond about a week beyond that date, the scheme will have to be completely redesigned. Now that means we can't start building here for probably 13 to 15 months, and we shall double our costs on fees, for instance.
While the children had been occupying the site, an independently financed community worker had been helping the parents by investigating the council's plans. Chris Holmes.
I think it would be possible for the demolition work to proceed on those parts of the site where the majority of the demolition still has to be done, and that's got to be completed before any building work can start at all. Now, this could only be discovered by sort of negotiations with the contractors to see if there was a way in which the wishes of the Tenants Association and the children could possibly be met, and it seems that's not been done.
But nothing would shift the town hall at this stage, and the next evening some of the councillors were delegated to give the news of the council's decision to the tenants. It seemed as if it was the end of the road.
You won yesterday in those chambers, don't worry about that. Nobody could have fought as hard as what you did.
Don't give up.
Run
Don't
away
give
with
up
the
like
idea.
that. Get rid of where you haven't lost.
Lost.
We haven't.
We haven't.
We haven't. No, haven't. We haven't.
Let's go on to the woodyard, Monday.
All right, wait a minute. Don't be so stupid. We would all go with you, Monday. I would.
The decision made, the council had moved fast. Within hours, the hopes and aspirations of the parents and children were being smashed into tiny fragments.
Well, my own children was crying. The children even the children that I used to take to the playground, they came to me crying, and they still wanted to go on the woodyard, even when they knew the bulldozers was in. Little children came to me and they asked if they could still go there. And when I went down to the gate, there was a lot of children standing round the gate still, and I was calling them away.
When I heard about it, well, I nearly did cry, you know, because we lost it. I think it, well, really, I don't suppose it's for the older ones, but the little ones, really, because they lost all the things to play with and that, what we made.
How do you feel about it, Christian?
It's wrong, because we ain't got nowhere to play. We ain't got nothing to do. Anything we do, we get moaned at.
In the adventure playground, you got swing tyres, build things, paint and everything, can't you?
The dull routine of council estate life returned to normal. The whole estate seemed to sense the weight of defeat. What was the use of fighting the power of the council when you were only the tenants of a housing estate? Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Chris Holmes had been trying to get things moving again.
The advice that was given to the members of the council was not, in fact, a full picture of the situation.
Advice given to councillors by their
officials, yes. For example, the fact that it was not true that the council would lose £1,000 a week if certain parts of the estate was cordoned off and given to the parents. Or the fact that the amount of parking space in the new development was not something laid down by law, but was discretionary to the council. I think those possibilities, reopened especially in discussion with Councillor Southgate and one or two others, laid a situation in which a discussion could begin again between the tenants of the estate and the members of the council.
The parents and children had come to life again. The information that Chris Holmes had dug up gave them fresh hope. And so once more the barricade came down and a new occupation had begun. By now the bulldozers had gone. The site was completely clear. The mothers and children were able to take advantage of a lull in the contractor's work and restate their claim. There weren't quite so many of them now. A lot were still dispirited and disheartened. But those that came were determined. What's going to happen if the police come along today and kick you off?
We'll come back in again.
But surely if you go on doing this and the council have expressly forbidden you to take over the site, you'll be arrested.
No, that doesn't make any odds. We have prepared for all this. We have people that will bail us out. We have people that will look after our children. Everything's been arranged.
So you're prepared to go to prison if necessary?
Yes,
The new occupation quickly reached the ears of the council. Emergency meetings were called. Then on the Friday, letters supporting the occupation appeared in the local paper. The pressure was building up. Public opinion was beginning to support the tenants. 3 days later, there was an editorial and more letters. The council's case for refusing the site was by now publicly shot through with holes. The council grew increasingly embarrassed. Even the building contractor was arguing that the tenants' demands could be accommodated. And what would it look like if the council gave the order for the children to be evicted and the mothers arrested? Whichever way the council tried to move, it could see no way of escape. The parents and children had won.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your supposed to get the woodyard. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your support to get the woodyard.
5 days after the reoccupation, 28 days after the fight began, it was theirs. And not just for the summer holidays, but for always.
We had an obligation to provide the Scouts with a site in return for the one they had given up. And I found, when I came back from my holiday, that in fact the development on the Scout site was by a separate developer, wasn't controlled in a cost way like our site was controlled, and was in fact, the development there wasn't in fact to start until the day that the schools went back.
You were let down by your officials, your permanent officials?
Bluntly, yes.
And how important were the parents in all this?
I think that certainly their persistence played a very large part in their getting what they wanted, and they have now drawn attention to something we've known about, but which we never got round to doing anything about in the past. We've instructed our officers, for instance, that in the spring of next year they must look around the borough at all the sites that we own and see what sites can be used by other people, other groups of children during the vital summer holiday period for play. Now, I think this is a generally beneficial thing that these people have helped to promote, because they highlighted the school children's, the problem with the school children during the holidays in Islington.
And so a struggle fought by a few determined parents and a crowd of expectant children had brought results no one would have thought possible only a month before.
I think we are seeing a situation in which many families, especially poor people in the inner city, are beginning to say that they are no longer that they aren't going to get a fair deal from this society unless they are prepared to actually stand up and fight for it. That they can't just sit back and wait for the elected representatives or the authorities at either the local or the national level to provide them with what they've gone without for so long, and that they will only achieve it if they come together and organise themselves to work for it. And in that sense, I think we are beginning to see the birth of a movement of a much more direct form of political action.
And I cry with passion, let there be wilderness left for my children. For across the child's laughter falls the roar of the bulldozer. And I cry with passion, let there be wilderness left for my son. Under the screech and hiss of progress creeps an army of emptiness. And I cry with passion, let there be wilderness left for my children.
Phyllis Kershaw was one of the leaders of those tenants. Chris Holmes is the community worker who helped and advised them. Councillor Marjorie Ogilvie-Webb is a member of the Social Services Committee of Islington Borough Council. Fenner Brockway, now Lord Brockway, is at 83 a veteran of decades of protest and law-breaking on behalf of reform, but Sir Derek Walker-Smith, QC, the Conservative MP, believes that reform must be brought about within the law. Chris Holmes, if I can ask you first of all, what lasting effect did the success of those tenants on the Lorraine estate have on Islington and the running of the borough?
Well, at the first level, I think, as Councillor Southgate said towards the end of the film, Islington Council are now planning a number of sites that can be made available this summer for children's play, and that has never happened before. Secondly, I think not only amongst the tenants on the Lorraine estate, but I think tenants and groups of residents in other parts of the borough are beginning more than they were to fight in the same kind of way, to fight for the things they want. I mean, an example a couple of months ago was the fight by a number of homeless families in the Hillside Hostel, demanding that that was closed down and that they were given other accommodation, which they won.
When you say fight, what sort of actions were taken in this fight? Could any of them be described as confronting, even law-breaking, like the actions we've seen on film?
Not law-breaking, no, but certainly confronting, and ending up with a demonstration outside the town hall, though I think the major part of the battle was won before. Largely, I think, because in that case, the chairman of the committee acted decisively before it got worse. I think if he hadn't acted when he did, and the council hadn't closed that hostel down, we might have seen the same kind of confrontation and law-breaking that happened on the Lorraine estate, because the council didn't act soon enough.
Is it because it seems to be infectious that the ordinary people of Islington have now come to believe in direct action as an acceptable way of getting what they want from the town hall?
Well, there are 200,000 people in Islington. I think it's only a small minority who are activists now, in the sense that Phyllis Kershaw and the other parents on the Lorraine estate are. I think there's a growing number, and that can be a very potent political force.
Marjorie Ogilvie-Webb, does the council, would it be fair to say, now think twice before carrying out policies which they may suspect would produce this kind of resistance?
I think It's rather the other way round. This council, and of course we were only elected last May, I think is very keen that people should participate in this way. It's a sort of alternative democracy. Speaking personally, I don't think that people...
What, the council is an alternative democracy?
No, I'm sorry. Community action is a sort of alternative, alternative democracy. It isn't good enough for people just to vote once every 3 years and every 5 years. And this present council is very keen on tenants' associations. We think that all kinds of people ought to get together to help each other, to help the community.
On a point of fact, let me clear up one thing. The present council, nevertheless, all 70 members of it voted against these tenants' demands in the first instance at their first meeting. Not one member of the council, in fact, expressed a viewpoint similar to the one you've just stated now.
No, because we were keen to get these flats built. It's true that, as Councillor Southgate said, that we couldn't hold up the provision of housing. The great shortage in Islington is housing. Nevertheless, the tenants' action was most useful to us. It alerted us to a whole area which didn't have sufficient play facilities, and we're very hopeful of being able to provide this kind of a playground within that area for this summer.
Phyllis Kershaw, can I ask you, would that group of mothers, of which you were one of the leaders, now do similar things again for another cause? Have you stayed together, for instance, as a protest outfit?
We did last night, actually. Rather before last night, we 3 different groups sent letters to the town hall asking if they could address the council on different matters. Those 3 different groups were sent letters back from the town hall stating that different groups were coming in and they couldn't do anything about it. Exactly the same thing started all over again, with the result that we had to go into the town hall last night and address the council from the gallery. We were doing it the right way, but as per usual it falls back again that the people have to go in and push.
From what you're saying, does it mean that you are in fact saying that in your terms they haven't learnt their lesson from your original action and the cooperation isn't better?
No, definitely not.
Mrs. Ogilvy-Webb.
I wouldn't like to comment on what happened last night in Islington Town Hall.
Well, it does seem to be a demonstration of the fact that the people who elect councillors were not altogether satisfied with their lines of communication, at least.
Yes, I think they probably were dissatisfied, but they were approaching the council on a matter on which the council itself had not yet made up its mind. We were not free to discuss this matter until we had made up our mind on that, and we shan't make up our mind until next week.
Why is it necessary for the council every time to fool the people? Why couldn't they give a straightforward answer? We haven't dealt with the matter. Why do the people have to shout?
My reply to that was that we didn't get notification in time. We had already agreed to receive other deputations, and there simply wasn't time to receive one that came in at the very last moment, the night before.
Mrs. Webb, I know of the other deputations.
Well, let me take it a bit further. Fenner Brockway, direct political action, protest action of this sort, is quite positively becoming more commonplace. Do you feel there's a reason for this?
Oh, yes. I mean, first let me say that I appreciate the position of the Islington Council, newly elected. But on the other hand, I'm just inspired by this dynamic democracy from the people living in the state and their children. This wonderful constructive thing that they did. What's really wrong is not merely between councils and the people, tenants, children, but also between Parliament and the people, that there is such a gulf between the people and the authorities who are elected once every 3 years, once every 5 years. That's the gulf. And this rising democracy from below is a magnificent thing.
Do you believe it's something that could get out of hand, or is it now very necessary, in your opinion?
Oh, it might get out of hand. I think it's very necessary in the present situation. We call ourselves a democratic society. We elect a council every 3 years. We elect a parliament every 5 years. The gulf between the authorities and the people is enormous. Democracy is only when you have participation of the whole of the people. And I think our Islington mothers and the children are given a magnificent example.
Derek Walker-Smith, what would you observe to be the hazards, handicaps and dangers in this trend?
Well, I think Fenner has really been too long in the House of Lords, perhaps. He's forgotten what it's like in the House of Commons. Members of Parliament aren't shut off from their constituents, and I'm sure councillors aren't shut off from theirs. There's no question that they're only meeting them at election time, good heavens above. There's a constant two-way traffic between them. The member or councillor listening to his constituents, receiving his point of view, and the constituent having the interpretation from the member or the councillor as to how that fits in with the general overall picture. Of course, there's a case for what in the jargon of the day we call the protest movement. If it's a question of bringing to the attention of a council which may be remote or inaccessible or insensitive, and I'm sure they're a minority, but if it's a question of that or highlighting something which either they don't know about or they've disregarded, then it serves a purpose. And this may well have been such a case from what we've seen on the films. But one has to look at the other possibility of a pressure movement which doesn't only do that, but which forces a democratically elected authority, be it a council or be it Parliament, to change a decision which has been come to after conscientiously taking into account every point of view against their better judgment because of the pressure of a single group conscious only of their own particular need and interest and not taking account or full account of the needs and interests of others. That is the danger.
That is simply the rhetoric of Parliament. It wasn't a conflict between two goods in that case, the playground against the housing. What was shown in the end was it was possible to have both.
Indeed,
and it was only the determination of the tenants that actually forced the council and the officers of the council to admit that was true. And so often is that the case.
You're generalising, you see, from the particular, but it could easily well have been the case, and I have a lot of experience of these sort of matters. It might have been the case, and it often is, that there wouldn't have been an alternative site for the Scouts' Hall, in which case you would have got this direct conflict of two goods, which is the basic problem that so often comes to local authorities, councils and the like. And then you've got to achieve what I call the highest common factor of what is good for all. And you will only achieve that by a reasoned and objective approach, listening to everybody, giving full weight to every consideration, but not allowing any one sectional interest to override the interests of all.
Well, I mean, it might be nice to believe that, but it simply doesn't happen to be the truth. There are large numbers of people, trade unionists against the Industrial Relations Bill, tenants against the new housing bill, furnished tenants, for example, families in the inner city, who simply do not find it possible to get that kind of justice through the reasonable constitutional channels that you're talking about, because they don't get justice and they don't get honesty.
They may not get their own way, but
they don't get justice or honesty.
Now, you are taking it upon yourself, you see, to dogmatize as to what is justice. It is, in fact, a very difficult question to know what is the right thing in any given circumstance. But the best way of finding out is not to take a dogmatic view from the start, but to be prepared to listen to all points of view and weigh them up.
Let's stay with the film that we were at. The mothers tried for 2 months to get a reasoned response from the council, and in the end they didn't. They got bluntly what Councillor Southgate admitted was lies.
Well, then that may fall into the first of the two categories I gave. I started by saying, in some cases, if you had a remote and insensitive council, then no doubt a public purpose was to be served.
It is that in local councils in Parliament is undermining.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Be good enough not to interrupt me. Their public purpose will be served by highlighting the considerations which the Council ought to take into account and haven't done so. But there are other cases where a Council could be steamrolled into taking a decision contrary to its own judgment and contrary to the public good as a whole in the interests of a small pressure group.
Let me, if I may, Mrs. Ogilvy-Webb, do you have more or less respect for those that protested and forced the Council to change its mind as a result of their action?
Oh, much more. Much more.
So that, in fact, you would encourage more of it?
Yes, indeed. Tenants' associations are growing very widely and taking exactly the same sort of line, namely asking for adventure playgrounds, for preschool playgroups, and we respond to this. As far as this particular tenants' association is concerned, they've stuck together. We've supported them as well as we can. They are very involved with us, and we're very involved with them.
You see, a point to Sir Derek Walker-Smith. It is more often said these days in many places that members of Parliament, and Parliament as an institution, the members and the institution are in danger of losing the respect of those that keep them there, if they haven't already lost it.
Well, I think, you see, respect increases with knowledge. I was going to take the privilege of counsel and suggest Phyllis here the answer that she might have given to you, that she respected the councillors more when she knew them better, and that is what normally happens. I just don't accept this view that Fenner was putting forward about the gulf between the elected and their representatives. Take the tenants and the Housing Financial Provisions Bill he was talking about. Last night in the House of Commons, I had my council tenants from my constituency up in the House of Commons. We sat round the table, two lots, and we discussed it away together, and we both profited by it. I listened to them, they listened to me, I learnt from them, and I hope they learnt from me. And that is the way democracy works.
Yeah, but I would want it much more.
You don't believe in democracy.
No, I talked to my Member of Parliament last night, and so did Mrs. Kershaw. We were both there doing precisely what you are advising. But the crunch is going to come when that housing bill becomes law, because I believe that there are many local authorities that won't implement it. And if they do, there are many tenants who are then going to refuse to pay their rent. And there is going to be that kind of civil disobedience on a massive scale, because people will not respect what that bill contains, because it was carried out without consent.
We always hear these threats in advance. Fortunately, in our enlightened and democratic country, they are very rarely put into effect. I would remind you of what was said by a very early protester, long before the days of Fenner Brockway, William Penn, who said that justice is the insurance we have for our lives and property, and obedience to the law is the premium we pay for it. You will dispense with that premium at your peril, and you'll find that the last case is worse than the first if you give rein to protest action, or direct action as you call it, in a way not to supplement our democratic processes, but to usurp the functions that they properly perform.
What I was going to say was this.